like to call to order the Pasco County Board of County Commission 10 a.m. meeting of February 17th, 2026. At this time, please silence all electronic devices and mute your microphones. Please rise for the invocation and pledge of allegiance.
Good morning. Let's pray. Father, we've come together today with another full agenda and just so much to talk about, so much to discuss. And so I just ask that you be in the midst of this meeting, in the midst of the conversation. I see on the agenda we're going to be recognizing the Teacher of the Year, and I just thank you and praise you for her service, and not only for her service, but service of all of our teachers and administrators, and ask that you put your arms of love and protection around each and every one of them and all of our students here in our county, Lord, so they could just have a great and safe year here. I also see we're going to be talking a lot about the infrastructure, Lord. Our county is growing so quickly, and we need to be able to keep up, but yet we understand that it takes money to do so. So I ask that you give us wisdom as we make decisions about all that infrastructure and all the growth, Lord, and help us to come up with true solutions to the challenges that face us. And I lift this all up in your name. Amen. Pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Madam Clerk, will you please call the roll?
Commissioner Oakley?
Here.
Commissioner Waitman?
Present.
Commissioner Starkey?
Here.
Commissioner Yeager?
Here.
Chairman Mariano?
He is excused. Now is the time for public comment. Citizens are given an opportunity to comment on any current or future agenda item coming before this board and on other business under this board's purview. Today, public comment will be handled as follows. First, we'll take public comment from those who are here in person. Then we will take public comment from those who have pre-registered for an online link and are currently on queue. We request that you address the board. Comments are not directed personally against any commissioner or team member, but rather directed at the issues. This provides mutual respect between board members and the public. After stating your name and address for the clerk, a 3-minute timer will be activated and a green light will be shown on the podium. After 2 minutes, a yellow light will indicate you have 1 minute left. When your time is up, a red light will be displayed. 3 beeps will sound, and you should close your comments. Online participants will be disconnected automatically when their time is up. Madam Clerk, do we have anyone signed up for
Yes, we do.
comment?
The first one signed up is Alan Rose.
Good morning. Alan Rose, 10221 Hilltop Drive, Newport, Richey. Today I bring before you, as I've brought before you before, our waterways management and flooding. My background, just so you know, 32 years, U.S. Coast Guard, retired. Started as a ship's navigator, finished up in Port of Tampa, started a new operation there, building the Port of Tampa from a $7 billion a year operation to over $18 billion a year upon retirement. And now, what I'm bringing forward is, I've always been able to bring some things forward to you, but not like I can now that I'm retired. 2015, it was my first time bringing forward barrier islands. 2016, I renamed the island Starkey Island, just to get a little traction, see if we could get something going there. It didn't work. And then we had 2017, the Dewberry project. They did a lot of surveying and a lot of gathering of information, which was very good, has not really been put to use. 2018, I brought forward Green Key proposals. In 2019, brought forward recharging Cruise Lake, recharge the aquifer, plus improve water quality. 2020, Hudson Beach project, because I knew things weren't getting done. I said, I can do something on my own here. I went out and I moved some rocks around, knew what needed to be done and what would make a difference between the radial current that had been developed out there from the development of the hardening of the shoreline. And we got it back to a directional current. Went from years of restrictions by the health department, couldn't swim, you couldn't do anything on the water, to since 2020, it's only been averaging once per year you've had restrictions by the health department. Things can be done. I took a little bit of a break there. 2024, I brought into knowledge the riparian flow. Has been negatively impacted by the continued rezoning, and this is particularly because of where I live, Golden Acres. I saw it personally and observed what was happening. And all of this rezoning that's going on, I brought forward signatures of many of your constituents in the area saying we didn't want this rezoning. One was downsized and the other one is on a continuous hold. That was one area. Wow, we didn't pay attention to the southern area. All this redevelopment on Ridge Road has caused real negative impacts. All three spillways are barely functional at all. So last year we watched Rocky Sink Spillway go backwards and it flooded out our neighborhood. And you may not have seen that because the flooding in our neighborhood, everybody's on acreage. You just see all the animals wading through water and different things. But I took pictures and I sent you all pictures so you could see. That's the type of flooding. And if we continue on this path without taking care of the waterways, it's going to get really bad. And it's not difficult. They can all be addressed. All these waterways issues can be addressed, and we just haven't been maintaining it. There's $3 billion in funding available for all of these projects. Yeah, I'd ever like to know, we can go federal, we can go state. There's right now direct funding at $3 billion.
Thank you, Mr. Rose.
Next up is Bruce Bumstead.
How you doing?
Good morning.
My name's Bruce Bumstead. I got something for all you to follow along
Move
with.
to receive and file.
Second. Motion and second. All in favor?
Aye.
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 There's a whole stack of 1 for each of them. Okay, so my subject here is selective enforcement. Okay, since 2018, I've been
Name for
complaining
the
about the
record,
illegally
sir.
mined properties.
We need your name and address.
My name is
for the
Bruce
record.
Bumstead. My address is 15324 Kerry Lane, Hudson, Florida.
Thank you.
And I'm here about selective enforcement. I've been complaining since 2018 about illegally mined properties. The county has came at me with everything they had, so I've learned all the rules about excavation and mining. And what's going on over there is not permitted. It's not permitted by the DEP. It's not permitted by Swift Mud. Swift Mud's given them permits in 21 to move dirt off the property, but not the yellow illegally mined dirt off the property.
Did you give an address?
Yes.
Yeah, everything's got addresses, parcel IDs and everything.
Well,
Okay, so,
I see.
and these are multiple parcels on the whole property. So one of them, the one subject that I'm talking about is right next to the first item is the Pasco Road property. That property's been mined by this company. Their dirt has been sold. It's been blocked off and now it's advertised as rental space for storage. Okay, and next to that parcels, you have the 8969 Bolton Avenue, who's been in violation since 2013 since mining that property, and nothing has ever been done. Mining is different than excavation. So now they're at the source of, now DEP has issued them a permit to remove the illegally left material from CLC trucking previous so that they could do a site plan and do a topical survey. They didn't remove all that dirt. They are now mining the old landfill from the 80s, which is toxic dirt, which has been sifted and spread out all over this county. With no oversight again, no permits, no nothing. They have no right-of-way use, they have no site plan, they have no nothing. And they're still operating as usual, all under the coverage of the county knowing about it since 2013, with the knowledge of over 500,000 yards moved off that property of illegal dirt. So that's the extent that we're doing. These next parcels, 8632, that's a parcel right down the street that's been in violation for 5 years for illegally leveling and clearing the whole property, filling it all in. Their water runs right down into a spring-fed lake on there. On the next item is the property that's on Bolton Avenue. It's a homeless camp. That homeless camp now is because everybody's been displaced from the end of Bolton Avenue and they've just displaced into a new parcel. So if the county has all these ROWs places all over the county, why don't they let the homeless live on them properties so that all the garbage and everything else ends up on your county property, not on people's properties that have left mountains of garbage at every homeless camplet that's been at. And the county knows where they're all at. They know they're from 52 to Hudson, all in them areas, all in them woods. The next property is New York Avenue, piles of millings on a C2 property. no permits, no nothing, you know, and that's continues on everything. So the next parcel of, let's see which one here. 19 in New York Avenue used to be just a vacant lot. It's now been leveled, cleared, millings on it, getting ready to be storage. Everyone has different lists of stuff on here, which Highway 19. They've turned around at 7806 Maryland Avenue. They've turned around and made a storage center and turned around and millings and everything on it, no permits. There's all these lists of all these complaints are all valid complaints that need to get handled, and they've been overlooked, and they're being selectively enforced, and it needs to stop.
Thanks, sir. David,
And I agree with you.
you have somebody from your
Cannot
shop?
have selective code enforcement.
I am the
Yeah.
most selective person enforced in Pasco. I know that for a reason.
Sir, David Allen and his team will speak with you in the back. Next.
Next up, Bonnie Garvey.
Hi, I'm Bonnie Garvey, 9121 Panda Lane, Port Richey. We both have the same agenda here. So,
David Cruz, 6611 Carnation Way, Port Richey.
and it's about the feral cats. They are damaging my property now, and the problem is, I have a guy there rescreening my bird cage as we speak. But this is getting expensive for me. I can't keep doing this. And the neighbors 2 doors down and behind me keep feeding the cats. You know, I counted 9 dishes out in front of her house and she won't stop. I've tried talking to her. They just won't stop feeding them. And it's becoming a real problem. And nobody seems to care. If I call animal control, they can't do anything. I don't know what else to do. That's why I'm here. You know, it's becoming a real problem. The damage. You know, and I've spent money on putting up devices in the yard to keep them out, and it's just, they're multiplying. They've had 2 litters on my front porch, and they just keep multiplying. So,
And Bonnie calls it a bird cage, but it's their pool enclosure. And, you know, it's been destroyed by cats sitting on it and laying on it and coming there that aren't her cats. And
they're falling through. My dog freaks out. They're using it for hammocks, like, you know, they lay up there and they pull it away from the frame, and I have to, this is the 3rd time I've had someone out there to redo my screening, and it's, you know, I live alone, I'm a widow lady, I can't afford to keep doing this. And I tried talking to the neighbors, I don't know what else to do.
And I've had feral cat damage because I have a convertible that sits outside, and the cats sit on top of that, and they, you know, knead it and play with it, and you know they're not considered basically what I think to be wild animals, where they were you know, animals that were nature to our area, which, you know, you can't really bother those, but because of all these cats that are just left to be out, and you know, again, people feel sorry for them. They feed them in different places, and all they're doing is multiplying, and they're not controlled animals, which are causing a lot of damage to people's homes.
Yeah, my neighbor across the street, same thing. Her lanai screen, they tore it, scratched it and tore it up. She couldn't be here because she's working, but, you know, it's not just me. It's other neighbors in the neighborhood. They couldn't be here because they're working. So I'm speaking for the whole neighborhood.
So whether it's code enforcement or, you know, animal control that needs to address it, you guys, I guess, are the ones that are going to have to make a decision about who's going to take charge of this and try to put a top on it, or try to shut it down so that people aren't having damage to their homes because of this situation.
Yeah.
Okay.
Thank you both. Ms. Cabral, is someone from your team here? Paul?
Excuse me, David Cruz, we need your address for the record, please.
6611 Carnation Way, Port Richey.
Thank you.
Thank you both.
Thank you.
Next up is Brandy Witten.
Good morning, ma'am.
Hello, Commissioners. My name is Brandy Witten, 13751 10th Street, Dade City, Florida. I come to you today as a concerned citizen to talk about these sky lanterns. I woke up early, drove an hour, and taking time away from homeschooling my children to be here today to let you guys know about what is going on. Last night around 6 p.m., my children saw a parachute falling from the sky and was wondering why it was on fire. I ran over as they are pulling it from the tree, and this green sky lantern was in the tree. I called non-emergency to be on the lookout and possibly do a patrol because they are in the area falling. Little Everglades Ranch was doing a lunar, what they called a massive lunar lantern festival this past weekend. It ran on the 14th, and it is 5.6 miles from my house. This location, depending on the wind, can carry these lanterns. And on their website, it states that these sky lanterns take place at nightfall and that they are 100% biodegradable and designed for responsible, controlled festival use. Lanterns are available online and for purchase at the festival, subject to availability. That they are also fire resistant, which obviously you can see that it is not fire resistant, and that they are biodegradable. Then 20 minutes later, we look up and there is another one falling into our oak tree. And with this burn ban that Pasco County has since January 28th, this one actually had little green or little embers coming off of a disc that was in the center that was falling from the lantern onto our yard. I am thankful that nothing caught fire, but that concern is such an ember could cause a massive fire in, the rubble from the hurricanes and people having debris on their yards and even wood frame houses. My house was built in 1930 as a wood frame house, and I know how fast that can go up. That is my concern, and also the fact that in their website it states that it is approved by fire marshals and that safety always comes first, that it is 100% dependent on weather conditions. I screenshot this and put it directly from their website, from their event page. They say that it was approved, and that is my concern on how the fire marshal can approve an event that these lanterns, which are also known as fire balloons, would be approved during this time. So that is my concern, and I come to you guys giving awareness and also just concerned for our area allowing these kind of events. And if it's just financial, and if it's financial that we're allowing these events, that we're outweighing the actual cause. So thank you.
Thank you. Thanks for making the trek over. Ms. Jessire, do you have someone from your team to visit with her?
Yes, thank you. Joanna Cheshire, Interim Assistant County Administrator for Public Safety. We are aware of, coming up to this weekend, there was a lot of communication with the leadership team and myself about how to proceed. We are under a burn ban. We take safety very seriously. We've had many brush fires since the burn ban, and we're seeing that in Pasco as well as our neighboring counties. So leading up to this weekend, we decided to have them not light anything on Sunday because we saw what happened on Saturday. Luckily, there was no issues to report on Saturday, but there are team members here, deputy chiefs, both. If someone could maybe come up and add some color to the situation.
Do we want to talk about this now, or?
No, we have a 10:30. We have 10:30 time certain. We'll do it during old business. Thank you.
Thank you.
Okay, the last person on the list is Dan Callahan.
Good morning. Dan Callahan, 7108 Daggett Terrace, Newport Richey. I want to thank your staff and Commissioner Starkey for keeping my friends and I informed about the tree ordinance. I just want to make a few comments today. I'm happy to see that you've put it forward until late March, perhaps to give you an opportunity to more carefully examine, what you're proposing. On the way here, I was at the corner of Plath Road and Little Road, as I often have been in the last few months. And when you look across the road at that development, what you see is clear cutting. And it looks more like Texas than Florida. I would suggest to you that you look more carefully perhaps at the idea that clear cutting can be bought off by a developer. I'm reminded of several years ago when Sims Park was being renovated. They were taking down all the trees. I came out of the Historical Society and saw them putting big X's on the hickory trees that have been around that property for a very long time. I asked the man what he was up to, and he said, well, you know, we're going to cut these down. So we made a fuss about it and got the developer to sit down with us. And he said to me, Mr. Callahan, when we get through, there's going to be more trees in Sims Park than there are now. And my response was, not in my lifetime. So please consider what you're doing when it comes to removing these trees. When they're gone forever, and it's going to take a long time to replace them. Thank you so much.
Thanks, sir.
No one else has signed up, no one online.
Does anybody else in the audience would like to address the board? Yes, ma'am. Good morning, Pastor Jen.
Good morning. Pastor Jen Kerouac, 15925 Green Glen Lane, Spring Hill, Florida. The Pasco part of Spring Hill. I just wanted to come and say thank you to the board and to the county for their support during the very long stretch of cold weather. And I wanted to just let everyone know, and the county administrator and the other staff that are here, through the support of not just the county but other county partners within the county, we ourselves were able to assist over 40 people getting into, at a minimum, temporary shelter and more permanent shelter. So essentially, I just wanted, you know, we should all experience the fruit of the labor, and without the county's support, we would not necessarily have been able to do as much as we did. So today, I'm here to just say thank you.
Thank you, ma'am.
Awesome.
Thank
Yes,
you, Pastor Jen, for everything you do.
Yes,
Yeah,
and
absolutely.
great partnership between our local community churches and the county to help folks. Truly a team effort. So thanks for your help, Pastor Jen. Anyone else would like to address the board before we close public comment? Come on up. Name and address for the record, please.
Yes, my name is Don Hassey, and I'm at 3691 Tea Leaf Alley in Land O'Lakes. So, we live in Bexley, and we moved up there about March of last year. And we stood on the property before the house was finished, and we looked across the way and asked the salesman, hey, are they going to build over there in the wilderness area? He goes, no, it's deemed wilderness. It's the county's. They won't build on it. And so about 6 to 12 months after we moved in, we get a notification that they're going to put a 4-lane road down Bud's Bexley right at the big roundabout, which we live near. And it had my wife very upset. Have a beautiful home. And there's many beautiful homes up there. No one told us about a road going in, which then we find out after we get this notification for a meeting that Bud Bexley had to agree to a road going through before they even started the neighborhood, which we weren't aware of. And I don't know how many people were aware of at the time. I mean, building a road up there, if you really have ever driven in Bud Bexley, it seems a little ridiculous because it goes right in front of a grade school, right behind it actually. It's a beautiful neighborhood. There's people who ride bikes, they run, they jog, and they rollerblade. Tons of wildlife. I'm surprised more people haven't been up in arms about the whole wildlife thing. There's deer crossing the roads, and they've been hit even now with the way it is. Alligators crossing the road, sandhill cranes, you can imagine, right? So I took a trip just driving on Lebanon Golf, and I was down in Clearwater, had to go to St. Pete, and I drove on that parkway. It was a beautiful ride. Anybody ridden on that road? 19, and just straight through, all the way, no stops. And then I happened to have to drive from Clearwater to Tarpon. And that was quite the challenge if you've ever been on that road, because you have to stop every 2 miles, 3 miles, and it's terrible. And I think what they're looking for a solution for 54 going from, well, probably Newport Richey all the way across to 75, but for our area, from the Suncoast Parkway all the way across, they're looking for a solution to relieve that traffic. So they think, well, we'll bring them through Bexley. We'll bring that traffic through. Which, if they could simply figure out a way to fund a nice, beautiful parkway from the Suncoast Parkway on 54 straight through to where 56 breaks off at 54, right past the outlet malls, that would relieve a ton of tension. It'd be a tough build, but it can be done because it was done in Clearwater to St. Pete.
Thanks, sir.
Thank you for your time.
Branford or David, somebody from your shop, give him an update on the potentials there. Thank you. All right, one last call for public comment. Anyone else? All right, thank you. We will close public comment and we will move forward to our 10:30 time certain.
Good morning, David Engel, Planning and Economic Development Director. It's my pleasure today to present a addendum item AR 117. This is a economic incentive request made by Moffitt Cancer and Research Center for the Spiros campus. The Moffitt organization is requesting a $21 million penny for Pasco commitment from the county to help fund a $228 million capital project. The campus is located at the southeasterly corner of the Suncoast and Ridge Road extension. And the project is seeking $21 million. This $21 million will be utilized as a local match support to a US EDA Community Development Block Grant, DR grant, that will assist in funding a 5-project scope consisting of the $228 million I just mentioned. The capital stack on the project is as follows. There'll be a $42 million funding from Moffitt. The county will fund $21 million as proposed, and the USEDA will fund $49.8 million, which is the component of this application. The project consists of R&D for radioimmunology. Secondly, it also provides a manufacturing facility and treatment facility. Included will be a incubator that will be privately operated and shall be taxable. And there will be also a component for incubator support through USF and Pasco Hernando State College. Currently, the board has funded $25.7 million towards the Spiros project, and that was done in an economic development agreement that was executed in 2021. And the potential path forward here is I'm just going to lay out for the board, is to approve and execute the draft supporting resolution and letter of support, which I provided the board in draft form, and we have finished copies to the agenda coordinator. And also concurrent with the submission of an EDA application by Moffitt for $49.8 million in grant support. We're indicating here that we're asking the board to direct county administrator and county attorney to draft EDA memorializing the county contribution, defining the project scope, and outlining project deliverables. So in summary, this is a $228 million project. The Moffitt organization is asking for a $21 million local match supporting grant, and Moffitt will put up $42 million as part of the project. And might I add, this will be a defining project for the Moffitt organization. We're going to be doing research and treatment that is of global importance for cancer prevention and treatment. Thank you.
Thank you. The Moffitt team's here. Speaker Moffitt, thank you. Mr. Carpenter, please, if you'd like to add any details to this application.
First of all, thank you, David, and thank you to the county staff who's worked with us on a relatively rapid timeline to get this here. I also wanted to introduce some members of the Moffitt team who are here. Obviously, most notably our founder, Mr. Lee Moffitt, who founded Moffitt 40 years ago this year and was an enthusiastic supporter of expanding to Pasco County.
And Josh, your name and title.
Oh,
for the
sorry,
record,
yeah.
please.
Thank you.
New title.
Josh Carpenter, I'm president of Spiros, which is obviously affiliated with Moffitt Cancer Center. And I've been there about a little over 9 months now. Also with us today is our general counsel, Chip Fletcher. And then this is, as I was mentioned, a part of a grant where we have multiple partners. So it's not just Moffitt and Spiros. One of our partners is the University of South Florida, specifically their pharmacy program and the radio pharmacy program. Professor Nick Karras is here with us today to talk a little about their plan to help build the workforce of the future. And then Dr. Prashant Pillai with Pasco Hernando State College is also here as well. So two key elements of our workforce partnership. I just want to talk a little bit about what radiopharmaceuticals are and what the strategic opportunity is for us and how we think Pasco County can really lead the way. So radiopharmaceuticals is about a $7 billion industry today. It's one of the leading ways to treat cancer, but specifically prostate cancer. There's a drug called Pluvicto, and the pivotal trial for that drug, as well as the other drug that was approved by the FDA called Lutathera, both of those drugs were approved through trials, in part performed at Moffitt. It is going to be a $30 billion industry. And so our goal is to make sure that we position Spiros and Pasco to capture that economic impact and grow those jobs. And we know that that's a combination of physical infrastructure. Again, without the county support, we wouldn't be here today, but it's also a portion, it's also going to be built on the talent, both the talent we have and the talent we'll have in the future. One really key component of this is supply chain. And so it's important to know that this is supply chain not just for radiopharmaceuticals and treating patients, but also for national defense. So the 2022 Russia invasion of Ukraine actually disrupted 19 of our 31 critical radioisotope supplies, and there's really not one serving the southeastern portion of the United States. This building, what we're proposing as a portion of what we're doing as one of the 5 projects in this grant that, as David mentioned, will have about a $228 million direct economic impact with a much larger indirect economic impact, will meet that need in a meaningful way, but will also position us as a leader in this important industry. The county support thus far has been incredibly essential, and I just want to thank each and every one of you, particularly those of you who've made time in recent days, even while traveling, to speak with me about this project, and I'm happy to answer questions.
Thank you. Board members, Commissioner Mariano, are you online before we start comments?
Yes.
Do you have any comments since you're online? Would you like to
Yes, thank
lead
you.
us? Thank you, Chair.
Mr. Chairman, before Commissioner speaks, we have video?
Yeah, he's got it.
Second. I have video. So we've just landed in New York. We're heading to our hotel, so pardon the noise that you may hear from the taxi there. So I met with Josh. Moffitt is such a critical part of Pasco's future for all the jobs it's going to create and all the lives it's going to save. I want to make sure we help them make this step, and I'm flexible whether we use penny for Pasco money, a tax abatement program, whatever, but I think it's important that we do support them and help them make the next step.
Thank you. Thank you, Chairman. And we did excuse you today, by the way.
Thank you.
And just for the record, so the commissioner is out of town, out of state on county business. Under your rules, he's allowed to participate in this meeting based on the unusual circumstances of him being out of town, as long as he can see and be seen, and you'll have to have any
vote on this matter be roll call.
Thank you. Board members. Ms. Starkey.
Hey, good morning, and good morning, Speaker Moffitt. Josh, you and I talked about this, and as you know, this board is very excited that you guys are here. But I did have some questions, and I don't know if David needs to come up, because I'm just seeing these papers. And so, as I mentioned to you on the phone, one of the concerns for me was that my understanding when y'all were coming was that the parcels were going to be sold. And you're nonprofit, so therefore we're not collecting property taxes. You sent me a paper that said if Moffitt leases the space to a for-profit company, we will get property taxes. So I just feel we have to protect the county's investment and our general revenue may take a big hit here soon. So this is all very important to the people of Pasco County. So I just want someone from my staff to speak to this.
Sure. And I'm happy to just say quickly, as a business person, I would make sure that I'd have a return on my investment, and I think this will have a direct and indirect return on your investment in a meaningful way. What I think is important to note is that, the paper that I sent around to you yesterday, and that we've also circulated with staff, is that our understanding, both inside with our internal counsel and outside counsel, is that property taxes are assessed not on the ownership, but on the use of the property that is being deployed or being assessed. So in this case, for example, we estimate that about 70% of the Spiros campus will ultimately be developed by private sector individuals, either developers or companies themselves. And in fact, I was on the phone with a company on the way here that's a private entity that anticipates paying taxes to Pasco County for work they will perform at Spiros. The question, I think, on property tax assessments is independent of the ownership, but is totally predicated on the use of the property. And in this case, again, our goal is to get 70% of that property tax base into private sector hands. But happy to also defer to Chip or
I see
anyone
my
else.
county administrator is also about to speak.
Let their general counsel
Okay.
have.
Come on up,
Come on
Mr.
up.
Fletcher. Welcome to the party.
Thank you, Chip Fletcher, General Counsel for Moffitt Cancer Center, and happy to speak to this. By way of experience, when we had many years ago a for-profit subsidiary created called M2Gen, which was a joint venture with Merck and some other investors, they were on a piece of property that we owned as a nonprofit cancer center as part of an economic development project in Hillsborough County, and the part of the parcel that they used, we paid property tax on. So that's our experience, is that when you have the commercially facing or commercial operator on property, irregardless of who owns it, with the exception of the county, is my understanding. If the county or the state owns the land, then it's exempt. But if it's a nonprofit, they go and look at the use. And so if we're leasing to a commercial operator, they'll have to pay tax. If we're sharing space, various permutations like that. But that's our experience, is that when we do that, we'll have to pay attention to what the use is, what the activity is, and then apply to your tax, your property appraiser's office, and go through a process to have that determination done, and then pay tax on the portion of it that's not consistent with our charitable operations, like a nonprofit health center or something of that nature.
And that is consistent with how the county would be treated if we leased to a for-profit entity. We'd have to pay taxes on property taxes, even though we would traditionally be exempt.
Okay, and then the other item that I spoke to Mr. Carpenter about was, it's my hope. I know we're making all these jobs, and I spoke to David about this too, and he said they don't really factor this in. It's not an issue when we do these contracts, but for me it is that if we're asking for these, we're excited about these high-paying jobs. I like to see those people live here. I had this experience when I first started working with All Children's Hospital back when they were putting up their satellite office, a satellite hospital or clinic in Pasco County, and I was in charge of fundraising, and there weren't many businesses back then in the early 90s that were here, so I started knocking on what businesses were here, car dealerships and whatever. And everyone said to me, oh, we love All Children's Hospital. We donate down in St. Pete, you know, because we live down there. So I had a really hard time getting sponsors for the Pasco Clinic because they all participated in charitably in the counties that they lived in. So while we had high-paying jobs here, we weren't getting the benefit of it. So for me, that's important. I don't know how you codify it, but to me, that's important part of the matrix is that the high wage earners actually live here and support our businesses. And then third, especially since you added manufacturing in there, I hadn't seen that before, and I'm glad we have PHSC in there and USF, and I see President Hall is sitting in the background, but we have a manufacturing program that the county supports, and we would like to add that into this as well as part of the agreement. And those are my 3 issues, and I'm much more comfortable with it now that this has all been explained to me.
Thank you. Commissioner Yeager.
Yes. Well, I just have a comment that I am very excited about the partnership with the county and USF and with PHSC, where they're going to be training the students with these programs to where they can work locally. I just love the idea. I think it's going to be incredible that people are going to be flying from all over to get treatment and come to Spiros, and hopefully when they're here they fall in love with Pasco County and decide to stay here, live here, work here, play here. But we are very blessed to have you guys here, and thank you, Lee Moffitt. 40 years ago, your vision, we have no idea how many thousands of lives you've saved, and more on the horizon. So God bless you, and thank you guys for everything you do.
Commissioner Oakland.
Yeah, I feel very comfortable with the answers I've heard here today to support this money going toward Moffitt, and the impact they have on Pasco County means a lot to all of us. Higher paying jobs, better impact for work and being at home, and people right here locally around Moffitt. You'll see the impact happen in the neighborhood and the area and all of Pasco County. So I feel very comfortable with moving forward with a project like this that will be for profit, that will pay taxes. We got to be very careful with citizens' money, and it's our job to make sure that we don't wastefully spend that money. We make sure that it's going the right way, and we're being paid back to our citizens, because this is our citizens' money, and we're very, very lucky to have Moffitt with us, and very happy that you're a part of Pasco County. So with that, I'd like to move approval.
Thank you. Commissioner Starkey.
Well, I'll second it, and I just want to say 2 things.
Okay.
One, hopefully that bill has died that says a county cannot give any money to a nonprofit, because then we wouldn't be able to help you. So I don't know where that is, but when we get our update, Ralph, we'll find out about that. I want to tell you a story that 2 months ago, every month I play this game called Bunko. I've been doing it for 30-something years. And one of my girlfriends in my group said that both she and her husband have cancer, and they're both being treated by Moffitt. And they were so excited that they could just drive, 10 minutes and get their treatment instead of taking a whole day and going down to Tampa. And so this was the week you opened. They were heading over to Wesley Chapel, or whatever we call that area. I'm not sure. Land Lakes. So I've seconded that, and that was just my comment under discussion.
Like we have
Mr. Chairman?
Yes, sir. Go ahead.
Just like to say, I want to thank Josh for going through and doing the research, because we did have the conversation much about the property taxes and the revenue. So Josh, thank you for getting the team together to figure that out. I'm supportive of this as well. I just want to make sure we have the flexibility, whether we reimburse ourselves for property tax, to reimburse the penny or whatever, but we fund it somehow, some way, and we just have a little flexibility with that detail.
Thank you, Chairman. Yes, and I agree with Commissioner Mariano's comments on we need to make sure that we're following when these leases come up with Moffitt, and that we are making the appropriate financial decisions based on those properties. All right, we have a motion.
Mr.
In
Chairman,
a second, we have to do a roll call.
And if I may, on the resolution, we had a couple of edits that didn't get in. On the third whereas clause, the description of the proposed project, before proposed project, estimated $228 million proposed project. And then on, after the now therefore be it resolved, number 1, at the end of that sentence, including the implementing agreements referenced in paragraph 3.
And I want to make sure you made the note of the AMP skills as part of the workforce training.
I don't necessarily think we need to put it by name.
Kind of part of the agreement piece versus in the resolution.
Okay.
Chair, Commissioner Oakley, do you want to modify your motion to accept the county attorney's comments?
Yes.
Second by Commissioner
Yep,
Starkey.
second.
And we'll do a roll call vote. Clerk?
District 1, Commissioner Oakley.
Aye.
District 2, Commissioner Waitman.
Aye.
District 3, Commissioner Starkey.
Aye.
District 4, Commissioner Yeager.
Aye.
District 5, Chairman Mariano.
Aye.
Motion passes. Thank you, everybody.
Thank you.
Hey, Mr. Chairman,
Yes, sir.
I just want to let you know, as I'm up in DC for the NACO conference, we'll be working together with EDA to try to help get the funding for that project as well. Thank you.
Very good. Thanks, Chair. Have a safe trip. Keep warm.
Josh, we'll see you in Washington.
Speaker Moffitt, good to see you. Thank you for coming. Now it's time for resolutions. Madam Clerk.
Alrighty, we have a resolution for the National Procurement Month. Would you please like to step forward?
Procurement team.
Alrighty, resolution number 26-128. A resolution by the Board of County Commissioners of Pasco County, Florida, declaring the month of March 2026 as National Procurement Month in Pasco County. Whereas the public procurement profession plays a pivotal role in the efficiency and effectiveness of both government and business, and whereas, in addition to the purchase of goods and services, procurement adds value to the organization by performing functions such as executing, implementing, and administering contracts, developing procurement strategies, and cultivating working relationships with suppliers and other departments within Pasco County. And whereas public procurement professionals at the Pasco County Board of County Commissioners and in other public and private organizations have tremendous influence on the economic conditions in the United States, with billions of dollars of accumulative purchasing power. And whereas the purchasing department at the Pasco County Board of County Commissioners is committed to providing high-caliber, strategic, logistical, and operational support for all departments within Pasco County. And whereas, in 2025, the purchasing department at the Pasco County Board of County Commissioners received the Achievement of Excellence in Procurement Award from the National Procurement Institute and achieved a new milestone by achieving 50% of all eligible professional staff members holding a national certification. And whereas the purchasing department at the Pasco County Board of County Commissioners recognizes, supports, and practices the public procurement values and guiding principles of accountability, ethics, impartiality, professionalism, service, and transparency established by the Institute for Public Procurement, NIGP, as fundamental tenets of the public purchasing profession. And whereas the Institute for Public Procurement has proclaimed the month of March as National Procurement Month to further expand the awareness of the procurement professional's role to government officials, the public, businesses, and corporate leaders. Now therefore be it resolved by the Board of County Commissioners of Pasco County, Florida, that said board hereby declares the month of March 2026 as National Procurement Month in Pasco County, and it urges all Pasco County citizens to join in recognizing the role of the procurement professions within business, industry, and government. Done and resolved in regular session with a quorum present and voting this 7th 15th day of February, 2026.
Move approval.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Commissioner Oakley?
Yes, sir. Happy to see the group here. Thank you for all the good work you do for the county and the citizens of Pasco County, because you help us get the very best price and make sure that we're doing things the right way. So I certainly appreciate that. And again, there's no I in team. This whole team works together to really make it happen, and we certainly appreciate everything that each and every one of you do. Anyone else?
Yeah, congratulations, and it's always a pleasure working with you guys. I had a meeting this morning on more changes that are coming, so we're always improving our system. And I mentioned might be some changes coming in the legislature that I heard this week as well on some purchasing requirements. But thanks for keeping us what's the right word? Out of trouble.
Out of jail. All right, well, thank you guys, and I know you don't have an easy job. We've been through how many protests in 2 years? 8. Yes. And I was this never happens, and then there's 8. So you guys do a great job, and we always know we get the best bang for the buck because you guys do your due diligence. So thank you.
Yes. You know, there's no I in procurement, but there's pro in there, and you guys are certainly becoming more proficient, especially with the updates you were making. You know, you all have a very tedious job, and details are important for both sides of procurement, our customer and on your side to make sure that we are staying in compliance. So thank you for coming here today. Mr. Carvalho or Eric? Either one of you?
Actually, I would like to chime in, and Carrie and all the accolades here that the board has mentioned are spot on. We have a $2 billion budget.
Yep.
And quite honestly, if you all stopped doing your work tomorrow, it would grind the organization to a halt. And so, you know, the fact that you do that and you do it so well, it ensures, you know, transparency and accountability to the public as we're fiduciaries of taxpayer money. And so just appreciate it. I always tell the new hire classes, they're not here to make your life difficult. They're here to make sure that we color within the lines, as I've heard some folks say, making sure we get best pricing, or more importantly, best value to the taxpayers. And so I just appreciate everything that you all do. So thank you.
Mr. Breitenbach?
County administrator's reading off my play sheet.
I think I have it.
Yeah, so I just echo his comments. I work day in and day out with this team, and I don't think you would find a more professional group around the state. Even when things are not easy, you know, we always make the right decisions for not only the county departments, but also our vendor community. And this, Chair, you touched on it. It's important to be fair on both sides, and I see that impartiality day in and day out with this team, and thank you for everything you guys do.
Thank you. Big crowd. Go down and take a picture, and we'll stay up here.
If you will, y'all stay up here because there's quite a few of those items.
They just get to shop all day long.
And then everyone who's behind someone, just make sure that you can see me. Take like a quarter step. Yes. Ready?
Madam Clerk, RS2.
Alrighty, do I have anyone here for the Bicycle Month? Please come up to the podium.
We see him.
Alrighty, resolution number 26-129, a resolution by the Board of County Commissioners of Pasco County, Florida, declaring March 2026 as Florida Bicycle Month in Pasco County. Whereas National Bicycle Month was established in 1956 by the League of American Bicyclists, The league hoped to showcase the benefits of cycling to promote individual and community well-being. And whereas in 2024, Florida was named the 8th most bicycle-friendly state in America by the League of American Bicyclists and ranked in the highest percentile for infrastructure, reflecting a strong statewide commitment to building a safe bicycle structure. And whereas promoting bicycle safety, including the use of helmets, proper signaling, and adherence to traffic laws, is essential to reducing injuries and fatalities among cyclists. And whereas the recognition of Florida Bicycle Month will raise awareness of bicycling and untimely promote physical activity and healthy lifestyles by elevating bicycling as a more widely accepted choice of transportation. And whereas Florida Bicycle Month features a number of fitness opportunities for riders of all ages to enjoy throughout the month at various parks and locations throughout Pasco County. And whereas Pasco County residents and visitors engage in bicycling as a viable and environmentally conscious form of transportation and an excellent form of physical activity and recreation. Whereas Pasco County collaborates with local law enforcement, schools, and advocacy groups to promote bicycle safety and awareness throughout the community. And whereas bicycling benefits all citizens of Pasco County by improving the air quality, reducing traffic congestion and noise, and decreasing the use of finite energy sources. And whereas the Florida Department of Transportation and our local agencies have adopted complete streets, goals, and policies to develop a multi-module transportation system to support pedestrians and bicyclists while prioritizing safety, accessibility, and mobility. And whereas the Pasco County Board of County Commissioners encourages all citizens to ride their bicycles to work, to the store, to the park, and around their neighborhoods this month, now therefore be it resolved by the Board of County Commissioners of Pasco County, Florida, that said board hereby declares the month of March as Florida Bicycle Month in Pasco County and encourages all Pasco County residents to ride their bicycles this month while practicing safe cycling habits. Done and resolved in regular session with a quorum present and voting this 17th day of February, 2026.
Move approval.
Second. Hey, I wanted to make the motion.
I was waiting.
Take yours back.
We have a motion and a second. Want to do a roll? All in favor?
Aye.
Commissioner Starkey. Boy, y'all stepped in it now.
Yeah, I had to look it up to make sure that we could still get this in time. So, one of my favorite things is making sure that we have a great network of connected trails. There's just so many reasons why it's so good for our community to have this mobility, exercise. Kids can get around without getting on the roads, getting hurt. So, just really happy to be sponsoring the resolution for National Bicycle Month. So, any of the other commissioners want to say anything?
Yes. One, I think it's absolutely great that we're honoring this month, and it's so important to get out and see our beautiful trails. And I always say a body in motion stays in motion. So, encouraging our parents and our elderly friends to get out and stay moving, because once you stop, it's hard to get started again, and it just keeps them healthy and lives their life longer. And just being out in nature, we're blessed to have Commissioner Starkey here that's always advocating for our trails and bike paths and things like that. So, and you look like you're ready for a ride today. Did you ride here?
No, unfortunately, I didn't ride here, but FDOT always wants you to wear bright colored clothing when you're riding.
Yep.
So
Not black.
remember to wear your helmet, and if you're riding at night, use a light when you ride at night.
Yeah, I certainly appreciate what y'all do, and bicycle riding, especially on trails, is the best place to ride them. In the east part of the county, we have a lot of bicycles on roads. It's very dangerous. A lot of times people wear black clothes and dark clothes, and they're hard to see. And
So now he's in favor of the trail on the east
I've
side of
always
the
been
county.
in
I'm
favor
so
of
excited.
trails, but seems like everybody likes over on the east side. They like the hills.
They like the hills.
And the curves and things like
So let's
that.
get a
But it
trail
makes
over
it
there.
very dangerous. And we have accidents every now. But if we could put all bicycles over on these nice trails, it'd
be a lot safer for their citizens in Pasco. So that's the only thought about it.
Commissioner Oakley, I want to
Yes.
tell you, when we're in Dade City, the girls and I walk your trails on
Hardy.
lunch break.
They're on the Hardy
There you
Trail.
go.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So, and they're very nice.
So my name's Brian Michaels. I'm head of the Bicycle Pedestrian Advisory Committee. We are still looking for some members to
I
join.
think I'm putting one on today. I'll check
So
with my staff to
if
see.
you have anybody or anybody that's listening wants to be part of the team to see the future for bicycle and pedestrian safety in Pasco County, you can fill out an application online through the MPO, or if any of the commissioners have recommendation for any members, we'd appreciate it, as we can always look for members on our team.
Tiana, you have any comments? Special treat, you're here from MPO.
I am. Good morning, board. Thank you. And I want to say thank you to our valued BPAC members, Bicycle Pedestrian Advisory Committee with the MPO. We're very honored to have them, and they are hard workers with the MPO, so I just wanted to broach that. So on behalf of the Bicycle Pedestrian Community, thank you for this Bike Month resolution and for our continued support here in Pasco County, moving us forward. We're especially excited about the kickoff of the Active Transportation Plan, which we brought up last week at our MPO board meeting. This important effort will help identify the infrastructure, connections, and safety improvements needed to make biking and pedestrian more accessible and safer for residents of all ages and abilities. This resolution and this plan together show Pasco County's commitment to a healthier people, safer streets, and stronger communities. And once again, thank you for this honor, and happy Bike Month.
Yes. And board members, bicycle members, thank you for your service, and we'll come down and take a picture with Commissioner Starkey in the middle.
I should have worn
You
my
should have bought
bike
her.
today. I didn't wear it today.
Ready? 3, 2.
Next order of business is consent. I see we have one pulled item. Do we have any other items that need to be pulled by staff or commissioners? None? So do we have a motion?
I'll make motion that we accept all the other consents.
C8 is the one
Items
that's been
being
pulled.
pulled.
Yeah, by me. A rare pull by Commissioner Stark.
Do we have a second?
Second?
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Commissioner Starkey, C8.
Yeah, can you put some of the PDFs up on here? So this is about what we pay when we have to mow someone's property. And nope, no, that's not what. That's for later. This is C8. Some of the attachments. Come on up. The first thing that caught my eye, because I looked into this, was that it was a company. We were using a company from another county. Mr. Mariano would, if he's listening, we like to try and keep this local. And I understand that we are now using a company. You want to explain that, what's going on with that?
Sure, Denise Sanderson, Co-Compliance Director. And so, Commissioner Starkey, you're correct. Following a competitive process, we selected a vendor. Very few respondents to that procurement a year or more ago. We did end that agreement with them recently for non-performance. We also had a second contractor that pulled out from performance as well. We've gone back out and have received competitive bids from, I believe it was 3 companies. The company that we have since selected is a Pasco-based company.
So, looking at it, we pay per square foot? Is that how it works?
That is
Is
correct.
it by the size of the lot?
Correct.
Or how much they have to mow?
Size of the lot.
But what if there's, because because I started looking up some of the lots, and, you know, what if there's only a little bit of mowing? Is it just too time intensive?
Works out in the averages. I
It
mean,
does?
it's a bid and there's risk.
Yeah.
So it's
Okay.
how you make
And
it.
in
you
some
really wanna
cases, they
pull
do remove trash as well, and so in some limited cases, you may see dumping fees associated with if there's trash on the site.
Right. And I just want you guys to take a look at what it, I mean, it's costly to the citizens, it's a necessary thing. So on one of these, okay, go down. Can you open up one of the PDFs that's attached to it? I think it would be on
Yeah,
another link.
Right there, the lien resolution.
Okay, so clearing costs, penalty. So, all right, so I thought the mowing, where's the mowing cost?
That's the clearing cost.
Okay, and then, the penalty is to the homeowner?
Correct.
The landowner?
Correct.
And, I'm still waiting for her to pull up the PDF.
I'll point out, these are class 1 violations, which is a $150 citation, and that's under the uniform fine and fee schedule set by the 6th Judicial Court. That is not represented in the lien resolution.
Okay.
That is
I
separate.
wanted to get an understanding of what the numbers were on this, on the PDF. There's a whole bunch of violations that we're dealing with there. This is, okay, so what is that number, so this is what I was seeing, $121, that seemed to be a pretty common amount for a lot of these mowing. So this says 121, now we're going to a higher one?
I don't know that we are. I'm not
Well, it
looking
said
at the bid.
228
Oh, I'm sorry. I thought you were talking about in the new contract.
Yeah, okay, so this is an example of one of the ones we're paying. What is the number 4, what is the number 5? I'm trying to understand what that was.
That's just part of the calculations.
It doesn't
Forgive me,
show-
I can't see.
I think it's part of their quality control, because
Yeah.
they check off the invoices.
Well, what is 47244?
That is the
amount?
total amount, including the administrative costs for that particular one. So there is a spreadsheet that gives you, right, you've seen this,
Oh,
that breaks down
okay.
those, that's also in your attachments. It identifies the clearing cost, the penalty, the administrative costs, the recording costs, and then the total, which all of those are within each lien for the said property.
Okay, so when we do a code enforcement violation, that money goes to the state, not to us, is that correct? Or
That
is
is-
it different in this?
It goes to the 6th Judicial.
Okay, I think that in this instance, where's Ralph? If our citizens are paying for
So, no.
mowing.
So the lien goes
To-
against the property and it comes back to us, because that's a special assessment lien.
Okay,
The
Correct.
citation that is written for the violation would end up going to the state.
And that is not included in these
So
numbers
this-
that you're seeing,
okay.
because this
So
is
these
only
re-
lien
These
resolutions.
recording numbers are against the property and would come to us if they got paid off, if the property was sold.
So are we first in line? Remind me, where are we in that process on the lien?
We are in the first tier, but there may be people in front of us, like a mortgage.
Well, all right, well, I wanted to understand what I was seeing, what that number 4, what that number
Mhm.
5 was. And then I didn't like that it was going to someone in another county, but that's all fixed. And so, do you guys have any questions on these? It's just so sad that we have to do this, but it's also, I want people to see how expensive it is for us to mow. It's kind of amazing that it costs that much to go mow someone's yard, that we can't find someone who'll do it for less.
We have a whole jail full of workforce, don't we?
Exactly, that's what I was thinking too.
Do we have a motion?
Move to approve.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
C8 passes. Thank you.
Wait, do we have a quorum voting? Is that okay?
Yes, you got 3. Yeah, you have 3.
Okay. All right, thank you.
Thank you.
All right, now on to our regular agenda, R50. OMB.
Hello, Amy Farrell, Budget Director with Pasco County's Office of Management and Budget. Sorry if I'm a little raspy. I'm coming off of a 2-month-long cold. It's shenanigans. I don't like it. All right, so what are we going to talk about today? We're going to go over our budget cycle, show you where we've been, where we're at, and the body of work still left to adopt a budget this September. We're going to look at different predictors of our taxable assessed value, economic indicators. We're going to look at our major revenue sources that fund both operating and capital. And then we're going to look at those known expenses and impacts of that are going to be impacting our FY27 budget build. Now, the story that we're going to be seeing today with our numbers really is showing us how our localized Pasco economy is very reminiscent of the pre-COVID economy in most instances, except for just the cost of getting stuff done. All right, so budget cycle overview. In January, we had a workshop with you all where we talked of our 5-year strategic plan moving into the second year of that. What should we be focusing on as we build our budget? We had an internal kickoff with our county departments and said, go forth and start building your budget packets. Now here, we're doing our revenue projection here in February, and then we're going to be briefing you all late February, early March, looking at the general fund and a deep dive into our MSTUs. Then from March to May, there's a big body of work that happens where we really fine-tune those budget submission requests. Department directors first come through me. I hack them down. I do good work, so Mike comes in, and then we can start talking about, you know, needs and plans and things like that. Good cop, bad cop. That's how we do this. And then in June, we're going to in April, we're going to come with our constitutional officers and the chief judge, and we're going to get some good dialogue with them on what their upcoming budget needs are and their long-term plans. And then in June, we're going to come back and workshop with you all. At that point, we'll have preliminary taxable assessed value numbers. We'll have pretty close to our proposed budget, and we're going to come back to you and say, we've been listening, but did we get it right? Is there still more work we need to do before we come back in July and set that trim? And then from July to September, we'll be doing more briefings and fine-tuning those things so we can come back and adopt a budget with a first and final public hearing in September. But it's a lot of work, but don't be tired yet. We still got a lot to do. All right, so now we're looking at some of those, what we call predictors of our taxable assessed value. So here we're looking at our new home permits, and those are leveling off. As you can see, so you want to look at that purple line, and we're right back to where we were 2022, right? So we had a big spike, but now we've kind of leveled off. So growth is still happening. It's just not that huge skyrocket. And so you might say, okay, Amy, why are we looking at this? Well, new construction is half of our taxable assessed value, and these permits are somewhere between a 2 to 3 year leading indicator, meaning permits that we're seeing today will impact our taxable assessed value growth from new construction 2 to 3 years down the road. So we like to pay attention to this. So if we're building an FY27 budget, those FY25 permits are pretty indicative of what we think that new construction growth rate might be. And then if we look at our total new construction values, so you'll see they've been climbing. We don't expect them to continue to climb. And when we look at that breakout of residential, which is this previous slide, right, our new home permits, those residential, and then our commercial. Residential makes up about 85% of our new construction, with commercial being roughly 15%. Now, over the years, we've seen pretty steady somewhere in the 4 to 6% range when we're looking at our new construction taxable assessed value growth. But now when we look at our total taxable assessed value, this also incorporates our revaluations of existing properties. Now, over the years, it's been this revaluation piece. Those have been coming in double digits, and that's what's really been bumping up our total taxable assessed value. But now let me jump forward one more slide, and you can see how that's starting to come down. Well, that's because our new construction is still holding pretty steady in that 4 to 6% range, but those revaluations are coming down. Okay, Amy, so what does all of that mean? That is a great question. Well, that means we are scenario planning anywhere from a 4, 6, or 8% total growth in taxable assessed value for FY27. And we like to do a scenario plan because, let's be real, I don't have a magic 8 ball and I can't tell you exactly what's coming. But we like to have some different scenarios so that way as we're planning and things start to shake out, it's a little bit easier to pivot and maneuver once July 1st happens and we do have those preliminary taxable assessed values. And so here you can see what that looks like for the general fund if it's at 4, 6, or 8. So $6 million additional dollars coming to the board after the sheriff's 40% of new revenue, after the payments to the CRAs and to our tax increment finance units. And then you can see at 6%, that would be roughly 11 million, all the way to 16 million if it does look like that 8%. Now, again, just to remind you, the 4 to 6% range is that new construction, and we are seeing a cooling off in the market where those revaluations are concerned, which is why we're modeling that 4% bottom number.
Commissioner Starkey, you have a question?
No, just looking at.
Thank you.
All right, so that was our taxable assessed value predictors, and now we're gonna look at our economic indicators. And so the economic indicators that we're looking at kind of help us predict what we think our major revenues might be, half-cent sales tax, those kinds of things. And as we go through these slides, you're gonna see that we are pretty in line with pre-COVID trends. So we hit some anomalies during COVID, but we are back to how things looked pre-COVID. So there might be some literature or things going out that are might sound worrisome, but when you look big picture and you go back pre-COVID, we've actually just, I'll call it re-normalized, if that makes sense. And so if you look overall, our US economy at the macro level, it continues to be strong. We're looking at our real GDP percent change from the previous quarter, but now let's do a dive into just the last quarter. And so you'll see here from this slide that consumer spending is really what props up that GDP number. And that's still pretty strong. So we are still seeing some consumer spending happening. Now let's take that a little step further and talk about, well, what type of spending are we seeing? Now, when we say that we think the economy is still pretty strong here, still pretty strong here, and still pretty strong here, because when you look at the categories of where we're spending, that's what we call discretionary spending. So we're looking at like non-store retailers, think your Amazons, your online shopping, sporting goods, restaurants, clothing stores. All of that spending signals a strong consumer behavior. Okay, so what does that mean? Well, that means that we are seeing our Florida sales tax to still be pretty strong. Now, when I talk about that anomalous period, so think that 2020 to your 2022 where we've got that big spike. But now if you go back to 2013 to 2017, 2018, and you see how that trend line is slowly, steadily marching up, that's the same trend line that we're starting to see now when we look at 23, 24, and 25. So that's what we say when our economy is starting to look like that of pre-COVID. This is what we mean. If you just kind of took those center ones out, you've got that same kind of modulated growth. All right. So now the other side of the economy, we look at what does that inflationary look like, and then we also look like what does that job growth look like. And now again, this is one of those where if you just take the anomalous pre-COVID data out of there, we're back to pre-COVID norm. So roughly $7 million of job openings is actually what the economists say makes a strong economy. During the COVID time, we were looking at like $12 million or 12 million open jobs. But there was a lot of money getting pumped into the economy. A lot of jobs were being created, but now we're back to that same kind of strong, normal, about 7 million job openings. All right, so inflation is still cooling, but we've been hovering right around that 3% range for like the past year. So we're looking at about 2.7% inflation. It's not at the 2% target, but we are expecting it to kind of stay flat. It's been right around that 2.7 for about a year now. So we're still forecasting that same inflation rate. All right, right, so now when we're looking at that unemployment, we're looking at this from a more localized level. That left piece shows you where Pasco is. So the lighter blue was this time last year, the darker blue is this year. So while our unemployment rate is up from last year, we're still in what the feds call a full employment rate, which pretty much means we've got a strong balanced economy between unemployment and inflation. And then that second slide is showing you employment costs. So the costs of having people and employing people. And the target there is to be right around 4%, and we are just a little bit below that 4%, so we're looking good there too. All right, so all of these things come into factor when we start to look at how do we think our major revenues are going to perform. So the first one up is our half-cent sales tax, and there's 3 key things that impact this revenue. So it's directly tied to inflation, it's tied to consumer spending, and it's tied to our population size. And so as you can see with our permits, our population size is kind of leveling off. We've got small, steady growth, but nothing hugely major. Consumer spending, people are still spending discretionary funds. So we're still holding pretty firm there. And then inflation has kind of stabilized, right? So we're expecting, as you can see, kind of a stabilized half-cent sales tax with just a little bit of an increase. So then our county revenue share. So this is our net cigarette tax collections and our net sales and use tax collections. And so this revenue source comes to us monthly, and we get a flat amount every month, until we reach June and July. And then the state does what we call a true-up based off of total collections, and then we get an allocation that kind of, we'll call it, backfills the previous months. Now, there's been an interesting phenomenon. So normally it's that same amount every year, but when we looked at our November to December distribution, there was a slight decline. So we have been mimicking the state's conservative posture in our revenue projection here, but still anticipating a slight increase. All right, and then communication service tax. So this is on all of our voice, data, audio, video, think, phone calls, landlines, cell phones, video streaming, satellite, fax, all of that fun stuff. And we generally use this for emergency services. So this is, again, we're showing just a steady incline, nothing major. All right. Any questions on our very modulated, slightly increasing, nothing crazy to see revenue projections? All right, that means Amy's doing a good job explaining. All right, so budgetary pressures, we talked about these in January, so really not much has changed here. There's the property tax reform, which we're still monitoring, and we do have a couple slides geared towards that. We are looking at addressing what we call a structural imbalance in the general fund, which basically means the recurring revenue that comes in is a little bit less than the recurring expenses going out. And so we like those numbers to be the same, but we've been eating into our fund balance a little bit to keep our operations going, but we have been making steady work, chipping away at getting back to being balanced. And so we will continue to do that good work behind the scenes to keep us in what we like to call a good fiscal solvency standpoint. Public safety, staffing, and expenses. We've got sheriff expense pressures. We're expanding a jail. Still working through operationalizing that. Wages and benefits, when we look at our total budget, the majority of what we spend our money on is related to people, salaries, and benefits. So that's always going to create some kind of pressure on any budget that we're building. General inflation and growth demands on our operating and capital budgets. I don't know if there's going to be a point where that bit ever comes off this slide. Solid waste rate study. So building the FY27 budget, we will be done with the 7-for-7 solid waste rate. So they are working right now on that rate study. So that'll be coming soon adjacent. Sustainment of our public facilities. So we need to maintain our public facilities. If we don't, the cost to repair them will only become higher. Really is kind of how that works, right? Wesley Chapel Library. So we will have the full operational and personnel burden on the budget. We've done a great job being very creative as we've been going through the different renovations to utilize existing staff when those libraries have been shut down, but they are all going to be fully online and operational come fiscal year 27. And then our Medicaid rates, we get those in June. Typically those go up. We'll have those in June, but you know, it's here because we keep an eye on that, and typically it goes up, not down. All right, so property tax reform. So our office is paying very, very, very close attention to what's happening. It's too soon in the legislative process to really know how things are going to shake out, but we do continue to monitor. And to my knowledge, nothing has fully come off the table, which means everything's still technically in play, which means we just have to keep watching. But it's too soon to really start building any kind of concrete, firm plans around what might happen. We continue to scenario plan as amendments come out. We're keeping our thumb on the pulse of that, making sure that we're aware so when we know what's going to happen, we can pivot. But it is important for us to talk about when we're looking at, yes, ma'am.
Can you go back that slide?
Yep.
What is, I've not seen this one, this tangible personal property. Do we do that? Is that something that we have been doing? Senate 550?
Yeah, tangible taxes are predominantly carried by businesses.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah, so think of it, stuff inside a building that businesses have that they get taxed on. Big
yeah,
things.
Yeah, so what does this mean? I mean, have you guys heard them say this?
So the Senate's proposing that we don't tax those things.
Huh?
The Senate's proposing that we wouldn't tax those things. Now, really, I think the big takeaway from this slide is that the variety of reform being proposed varies greatly. Anywhere from tangible personal property for businesses up to if you're improving your home to be more resilient against wind damage, the assessed value increment that your home is now worth more you wouldn't be taxed on, to a wholesale reduction of homesteaded property tax. The breadth and depth and width and variety of reform is vast, right? And so it's really hard for us to pin down what the implications might end up being.
What, on your 274, what are you basing that on? What is that an additional 50,000 off or 100,000, or? I'm just curious, because we heard a couple proposals when we were in the Senate President's office.
Give me 1 second, I don't have that in front of me, but my team will look.
It's not important if you don't have it. That's okay. I'm sure we'll get to that when Ralph gives us his update today. Hopefully today he's giving us
I have it.
Okay.
After 20 years of ownership and residency, it provides an additional homestead tax exemption equal to 50% of the assessed value of property other than the school district levies for persons who have owned and resided on the property as their permanent residence for 30 years or more.
Oh, interesting. And that's that big of a hit to us.
Yeah.
So we have a lot of longtime residents. We do.
Mm-hmm.
Does that have portability? Which would continue the pain?
Maybe. Maybe not. Perhaps.
What if you want to downsize? Okay.
All right.
Thank you.
Oh, you're welcome. So when we're talking about this property tax reform, it's important for us to understand. So this is just looking at the general fund, but the municipal service taxing units are also funded through property taxes. But here we're just looking at the general fund, and it's important to recognize that there are mandated services, things the state says local government will provide. And then depending on some of these property tax reform bills, there are also some protected services. And so when we look at our general fund and we look at what of those services are either mandated or protected, that makes up 86% of our general fund budget, less reserves. So we're not including reserves. So that means 14% of our budget is not mandated, not protected. And when you look at the impact of some of those large proposals, we're looking at a revenue loss of more than 88.4 million, 14% of our non-mandated, non-protected services. So depending on how this shakes out, we're going to have some conversations around levels of service and what does that look like. And so, okay, so let's take that 14% pie slice and let's break that down a little bit further into, well, what are those services? So parks, libraries, planning and economic growth, senior services, community services, our debt payments, internal support services, human resources, our payments to the CRAs would be impacted. And then some of our other constitutional and judicial officers that aren't in that protected class.
Amy?
Yes.
Or somebody else? So in our collective bargaining agreements, are there provisions if any major shifts and revenue come for a downfall? I mean, how's that impact our collective bargaining agreements? I'm assuming that it'll put us in a corner because we have to fulfill those obligations, right? So
I would have to check with Barbara specifically on those. I'm sure there are clauses in those agreements that would allude to larger circumstances, but I know we have reopeners, and we can get the board an answer on that question 100%. I don't have it with me at my fingertips, though.
because that would impact every county, every city.
I understand what you're saying.
Yeah. All right, thank you. Sorry.
All right, so any other questions before we move on? All right, so I'm going to shift our focus just a little bit and start to look at, okay, so for every dollar of property taxes that a resident in Pasco pays, where does that money go? So on the left, you'll see that dollar distribution. So 38 cents goes to schools, 1 cent goes to mosquito control, 1 cent goes to Swift Mud, 60 cents comes to the county, and that's under this board's discretion. So now if you look at the second half of the slide over to the right, what are the different levies that make up that 60 cents? So we have our general operating, which is our largest. That's 44 cents of that 60 cents. There's the fire MSTU, which is 13 cents. The road rehabilitation services MSTU is 2 cents. And then our general obligation bonds make up 1 penny. All right, so now let's see how that 44 cents of general operating gets distributed. And so when you look, 63% makes up public safety. So that's 45% is the sheriff, 13% is corrections, and then 5% is rescue. 3 cents goes to our TIFs and our CRAs. 4 cents goes to our other constitutional officers. So really this just shows you how that 44 cents is broken down into type of service. All right, so the other, so we've looked at the taxable assessed value growth predictors and what we think that might shake out to be. Then the other part of the equation when we talk about property tax revenue are the millage rates. So the law enforcement MSTU, so this is new, that ordinance was established and adopted in November, and we'll be talking this budget cycle about millage rates. I know the county administrator's having conversations with the cities in terms of participation, and all of that's still kind of a work in progress. So really this is just, it's coming, we'll be talking about it, a placeholder, if you will. So then when we go to the parks capital maintenance MSTU, so no levies or no millages have been levied against this property tax. But last year we did give $3 million of capital maintenance money to parks. And then I was chatting with my friend Keith, and he said the 2 major projects that they're looking to accomplish in FY26 are the dugouts at San Pasco Park and a floating dock replacement at the Withlacoochee River Park floating. And so they're through design, and the team's currently negotiating construction on both of those projects. So they're putting that money to work quickly. And then when we look at the road rehabilitation MSTU, FY27 will be the 3rd year that we've got a millage for this service. And The new growth money, we haven't touched that millage rate, so the new growth related to the taxable assessed value has just been funneled back into the program to continue to get work done. And then the fire and rescue MSTU. So back in November, the same time we established the law enforcement MSTU, we updated that ordinance to be able to incorporate the rescue component of fire and rescue. And so this year, as we go through this budget cycle, we'll be working on what does that appropriate millage rate need to be to absorb those expenses, and then the commensurate reduction to the general fund. So again, we're still working through the math on how that will work, but more information coming. And then the last bit is the general fund, and we would be remiss if we didn't show how for the last 4 years this board has done some hard work and has made some tough decisions to give money back to the taxpayers in the result of millage reductions consistently.
Just a quick question.
Yes, ma'am.
When the sheriff goes on his own, that would be able to let us lower the millage rate, correct?
Correct.
I mean, we've gone from 7.6 to 7.4. That's pretty significant. If there wasn't this talk in Tallahassee, I'd say, maybe we keep chipping a little bit at, but I don't know how we even discuss that if they're talking about taking away some of our, ability up there. So, just a reminder that when we did this, well, I wasn't on the board. I think Commissioner Mariano was. When they rolled it back without any thought to the future, and then Save Our Homes came in, it devastated this county. We're still climbing out of that hole, so we got to be real careful about what we're doing here, so we don't get caught like we did before. Hopefully, we have a little more thoughts about how we fund our future than they were doing back then. Because otherwise, I'm very happy about this, except of the talks that are going on in Tallahassee.
Well, I'm not afraid of finding ways to reduce millage. No secret there, but I'm confident we'll figure it out, as Accurate Amy always does.
Thank you for your confidence.
Yes.
I'd just rather be in control of it than Tallahassee telling us what to do. So we know what our needs are.
Any other discussion? All right, so now we're going to pivot out of the general fund and we're going to start to look at some of our other major revenues and what those projections look like. So here's our ambulance fees. And so while the number of trips are remaining relatively flat, the net payments per trips have increased 7% in FY24 and 10% in FY25, which is a testament to the good work happening in our ambulance billing team. All right, so now let's look at our local option fuel taxes. So the blue bar is our first local option, and this funds our operating expenses for our public works team. And then the orange bar funds our capital, is one of our funding sources for our capital road construction program. And so while these revenues are continuing to slowly climb, the expenses are outpacing the revenues. And now, while most of what we've seen is indicative of pre-COVID trends, our expenses, especially when it relates to capital projects, the cost of materials and supplies skyrocketed as a result of COVID. Those costs have not come down. That has become our steady norm. So while we are seeing some increase in our revenues, it is not enough to cover the costs of construction. And so we have things like mobility fees, penny for Pasco, and the multimodal transportation tax increment finance out of the general fund that is subsidizing and helping to fund things like our big road capital program. And then when we look at our penny for Pasco, so this one is also continuing to have some moderated growth, and this is very indicative of our steady local economy, because what gets paid here comes back here. And so this tends to slightly outperform the other revenues. All right. And so we've confirmed our budget cycle touch points and the times that we're going to hang out and talk about budget and make some tough decisions. We've explored our major revenue projections within the general fund. We talked about overarching budget pressures. And then we explored some of our major revenue projections that are not in the general fund. And our next step, again, is going to be one-on-one briefings with each of you where we look at the general fund and our different MSTUs. And we do that long-term horizon look. Any questions for me?
Any questions from the board?
Just a comment. I think you did an amazing job, Amy. I like how you just broke everything down, the penny slide and all of it. Just great job.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Same.
It's my team. They're pretty awesome.
Well, I can tell you since joining this board in November of 2022, in my opinion, you and your team have made significant strides in simplifying this process for understanding for us and the public, and the tweaks that you continue to make along our budget journey every year are very much appreciated by me, and I think probably others out in the community as well. So thank you guys for taking time to try to understand how the average citizen thinks that isn't in this every single day, and that's just a testament of your work for transparency for our money and to our citizens. So thank you.
You're welcome. Thank you.
All right, no questions. We'll move on to commissioner items. Commissioner Oakley.
Don't have very much. I just had the thing that actually came up over the weekend was these, what do you call those, kites or something that had the little flame that.
Lanterns. Yeah, the lanterns.
The lanterns. Maybe we can get an answer now because it seems strange that we would allow them to have a permit to do that when we've got a burn ban on at the same time. And the winds, these devices are all controlled by the wind, and the wind was up during this past weekend, and that's why some people in Dade City, which is quite a ways from Little Everglades Ranch, started seeing those flying in, and actually they do have a flame with them. So, but I didn't hear of any real big issues, but it could have been. So, is there something that we shouldn't have had that because of the ban, or not? Maybe Joanna could answer that, or have someone answer for us.
Thank you. Joanna Cheshire, Interim Assistant County Administrator for Public Safety. Yeah, it's an interesting situation for that. A permit was issued for it. Those lanterns fall under the state statute of fireworks, so it's a fireworks permit. We are under a burn ban, but as you know, or you may know, we're usually under a burn ban during the 4th of July holiday. And so it's kind of just a weird situation with the fireworks in that way. But a permit was issued for this weekend for the event as a firework permit, per usual. We did consider the burn ban that we're under, and so we had a lot of resources out there to mitigate any risk that was paid for by the event. So they took on that responsibility. Saturday, you're right, there were no issues. Sunday, winds picked up, and Fire Marshal, the chief, and myself spoke about it and decided to pull that permit for Sunday. So they were not able to light anything on Sunday. They were very understanding. I know that there's another aspect to this, though, is that the lanterns, and obviously we saw one today during public comment, of you know how those may fall in people's properties and the kind of the trash that creates. So that's unique. So yeah.
I think one of the main concerns, I mean, those fell toward Dade City, but if the wind had been going from east to west instead of west to east, those would have gone out in the green swamp, which could have been a much bigger issue than what actually happened. So, but it was just a word of caution to do the right thing, and I understand you did when you pulled the permit on Sunday. So that's good.
And I want to give the board confidence that we all spoke about this last week. This was something that, you know, going into the weekend, knowing that this was going on, we bounced we considered the risk of that and the consequence of going forward, and you know, we were very measured in that. So I just wanted to give you that confidence. We were speaking throughout the weekend.
Something to follow up on Commissioner Oakley's points. So the customer came in today, says she's 5 miles away. Fireworks don't travel 5 miles from their discharge. We also don't, or we try to discourage releasing balloons that travel and land in people's pastures and cows eat them or whatever. They're hung up in their trees or they have to pick them up. There's a litter problem with these. So what's the options around the environmental impacts if they land in green swamp, start a fire? You know, their event is leaving their yard, their fence, and going on to somebody else's property, and that's troublesome to me. Do what you want on your side of the fence, right? But the moment what you have going on your side of the fence impacts somebody on their side of the fence, then we have a potential issue. So as far as environmental impacts and litter associated with the lanterns, are there any options to take a look at for that aspect?
I'd have to sit with Jeff and his team to see, if there is a litter or environmental angle that can be looked at. Obviously, there is the preemption, they are fireworks, but following your line of reasoning that fireworks don't land 5 miles away, that there is a cleanup and a nuisance problem there. I'm happy to explore that if the board wants to take that direction and to potentially bring something back. I don't know what form that would look. We'd have to sit with Jeff's team and go through that, but that's fair consideration to at least address what obviously today was a public concern.
We could also ask the Commissioner of Agriculture whether or not they still are of the opinion that these are classified as fireworks. We got that pushback in 2018, which apparently was the last time that this issue came up in front of the county.
You have direction to research it?
I mean, I don't need a vote.
Yeah.
I'm good.
All right, excellent. Commissioner Starkey?
I had no idea there were events going on at Little Everglades Range.
Yeah, I hadn't heard about it either.
Yeah, so I'm actually kind of happy they're doing things. We said bring back the Little Everglades steeplechase. That was an awesome event, right? Who was around when that was going on?
I just
That
got
was the
here.
best. I want you to know I did win an award for my picnic setup. I still have it, my little plate and my little ribbon. Okay, so I didn't come back to the board meeting a couple weeks ago because I went and toured the super park at VOPH. What you're seeing with Keith, and I can't remember his name, walking down the hill is where the bike path and walking path is going to go, and it is so steep. It's a wonderful. It's going to be such a cool bike park. But I do think we're talking about maybe making a path so that little kids on little bikes, they're going to bomb down that hill and die at the end. So we got to find a way that we can make it safe for everybody. And looking up, when you look up here on the right, that's where the active part of the park is going to be up on top of that hill with the soccer and all the other fields. So lots of little waterfalls coming down that mountain. I guess there's springs in it, that hill. It's a Florida mountain. Down that hill for beautiful, beautiful experiences for our people. I'm just so excited about this park. I joined everyone up in Tallahassee for Pasco Days. Thank you guys for putting that together. That was a great event. What would we have? A couple hundred people at the reception that first night? Seemed like that's the most we've ever had.
Yeah, it was full. It was good.
Yeah. And I hear they're going to have even more. Is it just one chamber or were both chambers there? Does anyone know? Because we do have 2 chambers. I know it was the Greater Pasco Chamber that was there. And I'm sorry your husband was sick that night because he does so much work in helping put this together. All right, so as a past Woman of Distinction honoree, we were notified of a couple VIP cookie awards, and my staff handed them out to the Girl Scouts who sold a ton of cookies. And so congratulations to Amelia and Lily of Troop 2308. They received the VIP Cookie Spirit Badge. It's the first year for both of them. I was a brownie. I tried to be a Boy Scout, but they wouldn't let me. I wanted to go camping. Yeah. But I was a brownie and a Girl Scout back in the day. All right, so I want to thank the men and women of Pasco County Sheriff's Office for their dedication and hard work to keep our county safe. They performed another drug bust last week and holiday. They took 255.8 grams of fentanyl off the street, and that's enough for 127,500 lethal overdoses. So the last drug bust was in October on the same street, removing 138 grams of fentanyl. So thank you so much. I love to hear about these. I mean, I'm sad to hear about these, but I love that we're getting these drugs off the street. So thank you to our sheriff's office. I do have someone I want to appoint to the BPAC. Do I do that here, or do I do it?
You can make a motion.
Okay, so his name is Chris.
David, BPAC, MPO, or here? MPO.
Oh, darn it. Okay, I'm going to be appointing Chris Palovich as my appointment to the BPAC, but I'll do it at the next MPO then.
You asking for a vote now?
No, I have to do
It's got to
it.
come before the MPO,
Um,
not this board.
I wanted to
Okay.
say something about this. This gentleman came with all these code violations. I see him, I have my iPad here, and people are wondering what I'm doing. Half the time I'm going on when we're looking at stuff, and I'm looking at what's going around there, and I just see so many code violations, and it's really frustrating to me to hear this gentleman, hear what this gentleman's going through, and I'm sorry, it's a lot of it is up north of 52. But I was in Moon Lake, because we have something this afternoon on the agenda, and I had a resident on another street come out to me, because I was sitting there for a long time looking at stuff, and he came out and said, "What are you doing?" And I mentioned I was a commissioner, not his commissioner, but I was doing my research for a vote coming up today. And he said, code enforcement comes through here all the time, but they never do anything. And he said, there's so many violations around here, but for me to call it in, he said, I have to put my name on it. I can't be anonymous. So I am hoping that went through. But I just wish that we could be a little more, I think that's our own rule, that someone has to call it in.
No.
No?
No.
If our code enforcement officers see a violation,
no.
they can't do anything about it?
If they are out monitoring and they observe a condition, they can write it up themselves.
Okay.
But
Well,
they
there are-
can't take a complaint anonymously under state law.
But this one, he mentioned to me, because he was really frustrated, because he owns 2 lots on a neighboring street. And he said he went to pull a permit to be legal, to put in a shed, and they told him he had to get an engineer to sign off on it and all this stuff to put a shed on, unless he bought a plastic one, he could move it there and not have to do that. But he said, but my neighbor bought this shed without a permit. Now, I don't know if this is true. I'm having Mike Wells look into this. Moved this shed in, and then he turned it into a house. So there is no address, there's no mailbox, but someone is living there. There's furniture in there. I didn't go up to the window. I've learned my lesson. But it's just, I feel for the people who want to follow the rules and want to live, they've invested in their home, and we actually have a planning commissioner who is so frustrated, because in his neighborhood, he's got very, very obvious violations all around him, and no one's doing anything about it. So I just had to speak up, because I'm all about code enforcement. I'm all about protecting people's investments and those who live by the rules. I don't think we should be rewarding, this is for later this afternoon, the video. So I just want to say that. Commissioner?
Y'all done?
Yep.
Thank you, ma'am. Commissioner Yeager.
All right. Okay, so this was a mass evening in Venice. This was the Morton Plant North Bay Hospital Gala. So that's a beautiful event. Do I have another slide as well?
Where was that location?
Spartan Manor.
Wow.
It was stunning, absolutely stunning. And the statue on the left is real. So she moved throughout the night, and you would never know she was real. Okay, next slide. And then I won't go into too much, but this was our Tallahassee trip, and I want to give a shout out to our 3 lobby firms. They did a great job. It was very organized. We had no downtime. I felt like all of our meetings went really well. As Commissioner Starkey said, Pasco Day was a huge hit. It is growing every year by leaps and bounds. And next year they're thinking about adding Dade City to make it even larger. So we're super excited about that. All right. And then I just want to give a shout out. I know Commissioner Starkey was going to do this. We didn't talk about it, but to the Pasco Sheriff's Department, just last week they had 9,345 calls. So let that sink in for a second, just to think about the ground they cover. Yep, right here, I see you. And how much they do for our county. That included a variety of calls for an attempted homicide near Zephyr Hills, attempted homicide in Wesley Chapel, child abuse cases, sexual battery cases, among others. So sometimes we lose sight of just saying, oh, Pasco Sheriff's Office. 9,345 calls in a week. So great job, guys. And then so this is for fire rescue. And if you haven't gotten to meet the new puppy, he's so cute. Gina, I'm going to send you his picture. Did you guys get to see the new puppy? You did, okay. And since the burn ban was enacted January 28th, Pasco Fire has responded to 73 outside brush fires. We've burned a total of 135 acres. Our largest fires were 40 acres in Starkey Ranch, 30 acres off of Blanton. During these fires, we also lost 3 Class A RVs, 2 enclosed trailers, 1 flatbed trailer with a car and some furniture, but no residential structures were damaged. Since the implementation of the burn ban, 13 county ordinances citations have been issued totaling $13,934 in fines. So just hats off to fire rescue. These guys have just not had a break at all. And between the Sheriff's Office, fire rescue, 911, they have had their hands full. And I just wanted to recognize them for all their hard work, because this is all year round and that's just in a week. So thank you, guys. And that's all I have.
All right. I don't have anything. County Administrator, we have 3 minutes.
Very, very quick. Just wanted to note that on March 7th, we'll be participating in the Great American Cleanup. So it's always the first Saturday in March. Last year, we had over 1,000 folks participate in that. Picked up 23 tons of trash off of our county. So Keep Pasco Beautiful's website has more information, and we hope to perhaps bring something back and report to the board on how successful the event on March 7th was.
Yes, great job. Keep Pasco beautiful. County Attorney?
I don't have anything, thank you.
Clerk?
We have nothing.
All right. Chase, we gave you kudos unless there's anything you want to say. Thank you, sheriffs.
I do have a question.
Yes, ma'am.
Administrator. Are we going to get any kind of legislative update today since the budgets are out? I see Ralph back there.
I can have Ralph.
Yeah, we got a couple minutes. Let's hear. You okay with that?
Come up if you want.
Yeah.
Sure.
I didn't hear what was in the House or Senate budget. Where are we sitting? And because we can, work behind the scenes too. So, how'd we do?
Okay, I can give you Ralph Lair, Intergovernmental Affairs. Good morning. So currently we are getting ready to go into budget conference. The House and the Senate rolled out their budgets last week. Today the Senate, or over the weekend, the Senate was gathering and working on amendments. The House is not doing amendments to their budget. So they're getting those in posture, ready to go to a conference at the end of the week. Going into conference, we had one item, the decon truck for the fire department, partially funded in the House, fully funded in the Senate. And then also in the Senate,
That's it in the House?
that's it in the House. And then also going into the budget, we had money for Rangeland Boulevard. And those were the only two projects we had going into it. Again,
Do we know?
again, we'll have a better feel when the Senate rolls out with the amendments included placeholders that we will have going into conference. And I anticipate 2 additional projects will be included, but until I see it in black and white, don't really want to discuss further.
All right.
Thank you.
Well, it's noon, and we will adjourn and see everybody back here at 1:30.
Wake up. You're breaking us.
Ron, nothing for Dade City again? Nothing?
I am pushing the sidewalks right now. They're a different
We're not getting, nothing for the Dade City shelter? Nothing?